Hello, 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 everybody. How is it going? Happy Tuesday. Tuesday, September 19th, if you can even believe it. Sorry, I had to turn the volume up on the phone. Hey, Robin. As you're popping on, say hello. Hello, Renee. Marilyn. Howdy do. I thought I was going to be early, and then, of course, YouTube must have changed something about the orientation, and now you have to do it in the settings instead of just rotating the phone. So, oh boy. Barbara, hey Kim. Mary, howdy, howdy. Laura, hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. So, it is 7 o'clock. Actually, it's 7:01, but we're not going to worry about how late we are, right? Only 1 minute. Okay, so today is the last episode for Alcohol Inks, and we are going to talk about the Lift ink. Hey, Marianne. Hi, Lois. Welcome, welcome. We're talking about alcohol lifting. So I've got the pad here and the little re-inker for that. And of course, as always, I'm going to show you some things first and then actually demo. So this was a panel that I did on Yupo one of the last times we were live. And I stamped, I used the alcohol lift ink on it with one of Tim Holtz background stamps. It's an older one, so I don't know if it's available anymore. But so I pulled the ink off on this one, and then voila, I stamped it on this one. And now you have two backgrounds. And that is with the stamp. So I think you can probably use any stamp. I used red rubber stamp, and the best oh my gosh, the best outcome, is if you're lifting off of Yupo paper, because we did this on Yupo paper, and you're stamping on, this is the alcohol ink cardstock. So it's the gloss cardstock. And this works better when you're stamping with what you lifted because it is porous. So it allows the alcohol ink and the lift ink to absorb into the paper. So non-porous when you're using alcohol inks and then lifting. Porous when you're stamping with the lift ink, okay? All right, the other way that you can use the lift ink is by using the re-inker directly. And I did a yucky one I want to show you, but I want to show you why so that you understand. But I did a little sample and then I'm going to do it again. So I used this Tim Holtz star stencil. I think that's just called stars. Again, on a panel that I did last time. And you can see how nicely the lift ink just lifts the alcohol ink off of the Yupo. And that's really what the lift ink does. It lifts the alcohol ink off of whatever surface, okay? Now, when I was watching Tim do these demos, I learned some really great tips from him, of course. And one of the tips is that you have to make sure that what you are using when you're lifting is clean. So your stamp needs to be clean. I'm going to try it with this stamp. So I am going to clean it with this because I don't usually clean my stamps, but I'll get all the residue that's on it right now at least off. So that is the Archival ink cleaner. And so I am going to clean. So your stamp needs to be clean. And your stencil needs to be clean also, all right? So we will use that stamp in a second, but I want to show you what happens when you don't use a clean stencil. So I took one of the panels that we did before, and I wanted to try this stencil, which we had used for a demo before with alcohol ink. And I used... You use the foam when you're doing this technique instead of the felt, because the felt gets stuck in the stencil. Sorry, Mary's asking, do you have to stamp the lift off immediately? No, you don't actually, Mary. I'll talk a little bit about that when we get to the demo, okay? But no, you don't. So what I did was I was put this stencil on here, and this was clean when I used it, when I started with it, and I put some alcohol lift ink on it, and I started to do the technique. Now, it was lifting the ink off of my stencil and lifting the ink off of here, so it wasn't getting a clean lift. So I just want to show you, see, nothing, you can barely see. I got some transfer with some of the other colors of ink on here that you can barely see, but it wasn't lifting anything off because it was hitting the stencil first, right? Because it's a little bit higher and it wasn't clean. So this is all of the alcohol ink that was coming off. This is the tiny bit of alcohol ink that was coming off when I did the sample that worked, okay? So it is really important that you're using clean stencils and stamps, or the technique might not work, okay? I just wanted to make sure. All right, so I am going to use my Tonic, the Tim Holtz stamp platform, and the reason is because you can switch the sides and use rubber. Now I wanted to use the new Waffle Flower grip mat in my Misty, but it's too thick to do a rubber stamp with, so we're going to have to use our trusty Tonic one. Okay, so I just did some quick backgrounds with alcohol ink on Yupo. This is on Yupo paper, all right? I had a little bit of washi on there, and we are going to use this butterfly stamp. I want to get this over here so you can see the whole shebang, okay? All right, so I'm going to pick up the stamp. Now, I cleaned it, so hopefully it's clean enough. Sometimes archival ink doesn't ever come off. So we're going to put the, like a regular ink pad, use the lift ink on your stamp. Make sure you get it nice and coated and juicy, right? All right, so I've got lift ink all over. And I am going to now stamp. And sorry, I got to get some pressure on here, so make sure we get good contact here. Of course, where is my stamping assistant when I need it? Okay. Ready? Oh, sure. Okay, now you can already sort of see that the lift ink has lifted some of the alcohol ink off. Can you see that? That is just with doing nothing. Now, what you want to do is take a paper towel, and again, I use Viva in my studio just because it doesn't have any pattern on it. You can use a soft cloth. You could use your flour sackcloth, but mine is filthy, so I want to use a clean paper towel so I can show you. And what you want to do is dab, okay? Dab. Do not rub. And you see how you're still lifting a bit of the ink off? So you're going to dab, 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 dab. Get to a clean spot. Dab. And as you can see, I'm not rushing to my stamp where the lift, or where the, you know, all of this that came off is still on there. And the way that Tim explained it was that the lift ink acts like a barrier between the alcohol and the stamp. And the lift ink is made to lift the ink off, and you can see that it's doing just that. All right, so we are, I think we've got all of it. All right, I am going to take this off and try not to move my tape. Okay, so we're gonna set this aside for this second because we're not quite done. I wanna make sure it's dry. So I'm gonna give it a second over here to the side. Now, I am going to take a piece of our alcohol ink cardstock and put it right here. And now we are going to use the alcohol ink that the lift ink lifted off and stamp an image. I'm probably really pressing more than I need to, but I always like to make sure that I get good contact because I don't want to waste any of the ink. And voila! There is the stamped image with what you lifted off of the Yupo paper. Gorgeous, right? Okay. Now, I am going to actually, I never do this, but I'm going to because it's the lift ink. I'm going to clean this stamp really quick. You guys know that I'm not a cleaner. All right, so we'll clean that off and set it aside, okay? We'll set it over there. And now what I would like to show you is with the stencil. So I have, this is a piece of Yupo paper that I did a background on before. I have a little piece of tape on the back. Just hold it down and I'm gonna finish lifting. So I'm going to put, this is dirty where I already used it, so I'm just gonna leave that there. I'm gonna line it up right where I had it and put my stencil down. And I'm going to tape it in place. Now, I haven't used the Grit Mat with alcohol inks yet. I'm a little nervous. I'm not sure how it would come off. I think it probably would come off fine, but I don't really know yet, so we'll have to do some testing. Okay, so now with this technique, I'm gonna take some of the alcohol, the lift ink, right from the re-inker and put a dab about the size of a dime. All right, and I'm going to work in that ink into my sponge. This is a sponge, not a felt, okay? You want to use a sponge. But you don't want to scrub on your stencil. You don't want the alcohol lifting to go under, so you're going to dab. Dabby dab dab. All right. And unfortunately, I can't find any spare sponges, so I had to use the one that I used earlier. So when I go to Scrappy Chic, it got stuck up on my sponges. All right, so you're gonna dab the lift ink in your stencil wherever you would like it to do the lifting. I don't know if you can see that it's getting lighter where I'm dabbing, but it is. And we will see that right in a second when I do the big reveal. I think that if you kept going, you could probably get it almost to white. So you can see that that is all of the alcohol ink that it lifted off. Now, remember, the more we use this sponge, we might be putting some of it back on. It's all pretty much orange though, so it wasn't too bad. It's not like you're mixing all the colors. Okay, here comes the big reveal. Clean that stencil. And voila. So I'm also going to take my paper towel here where it's clean and dab the lift ink off of here as well. As you can see, we do get a little bit more lifted off. And look at that. You know what, Mary? Mary's asking, can you clean the sponge? I haven't tried. You might be able to, Mary. I haven't tried yet, though. All right, so I wanted to go back to this. So the last thing that you want to do once you're sure that you've dabbed up all the ink is, now that it's dry, you can kind of buff. So you can buff this a little bit, and it cleans up even more where the lift ink was. Can you see how that just cleaned it up a little bit more? So once you've dabbed it all off and it's totally dry, you can do a little buffing. Marianne, are you saying clean it with rubbing alcohol? Possibly. It's very possible that it'll clean it off. I just haven't tried. All right, so there's that. And then we dabbed this one, and I think it's dry. We'll go to a clean spot. And we'll just do a little buff. And look at that. All right, here's the image that we stamped from this. Now you can also go ahead and stamp on this, say with black archival or something permanent, if you wanted this to be your background and then you wanted to stamp whatever image that you wanted to stamp and use this for a card front. You could do that. Okay, so this is, the stamp wasn't quite as big as my entire piece of Yupo, but you could do a background stamp like this and do the whole background. So say with, you know, a big flourish stamp or something like that. Now, the one thing I will point out, this piece that I used had a little bit of mixative on it. The lift ink does not lift alloy or mixative, okay? It lifts alcohol ink. So you will not have as crisp of an image where you've got the alloy or the mixative. All right, but you still get a little bit of the image because it's lifting the alcohol ink off that was behind it. Okay, and then there is the image that is stamped. Now, you can absolutely stamp on other paper that is porous. This glossy alcohol ink cardstock works really nicely because it shows the colors pretty brightly. If you say used a piece of watercolor paper, you would absolutely get the image, but the colors might not be as bright. Okay, so you can stamp your image back onto something porous. You're using non-porous, like Yupo paper, to lift off of, and you're stamping on something porous. And this is the alcohol ink cardstock. Does anybody have any questions? Marilyn, yes, you can use a clear stamp, any polymer stamp, a clear stamp. Yeah, you can. I'm just, you have to be extra careful, in my opinion. This is just based on my experience on the Yupo paper, because I feel like it's a little slippery for those stamps. So just be careful. That's when using a stamp platform is probably a good idea. All right, now, if you guys want to wait a second, I'll get some 91% isopropyl alcohol and see if that cleans that sponge off, okay? So we can double check it right now. Now, this could be clean and just stained. And maybe it takes more than one shot. I'm not patient enough to worry about that, but it absolutely does clean off the ink. And then you probably would have to dab it off and maybe rinse it underwater. And if you would like to take the time to do that, you most certainly can. So yes, the 91% isopropyl alcohol does take the color out. It just could be stained. So maybe later I will try using this and see if it puts an orange on it. Okay. Does anybody have any questions about this technique or about any of our other alcohol ink techniques that we've been doing over the last couple of weeks? Because this will wrap it up for now. It doesn't mean that we will never come back to looking at alcohol inks, but that's going to wrap it up for now. So I'll give it a second. See if anybody has any questions. And I will say a couple of things. Don't forget, Scrappy Chat this weekend. The Sweet Gnome class is this Saturday. And if you wanted to get signed up, we've got seats available. You only have 1 or 2, well, let's see, 2021. You've got 2 days to sign up, get your deposit down for Scrappy Chic Tapes Over the Cape. So if you wanted to take that trip, you better hurry up and get that signed up. I think that's it right now. It doesn't look like anybody has any questions, so I'm going to wrap it up. And I'm going to say thank you for joining me. And we'll see you Saturday for Scrappy Chat. I'm excited to show you the Michigan Inspiration Project that I have for Saturday. I think you're going to like it. And that's about it. Have a great week. And enjoy this nice warm weather we're going to get again. Although it is not too warm, so I'm okay with it. All right, everybody. Thank you. We'll be talking to you soon.